master's degree at Ball State University in clinical psychology. He received his PhD at the University of Southern Mississippi and did his clinical internship at Yale University. Dr. Finn, take it away.
Thank you very much. I heard someone saying in the background, I can't hear anything. If this is your first time on, welcome. This is the first time that I'm doing a lecture with Zoom. I'm on sabbatical right now, and so I've had to learn my way via the great scholar YouTube. So welcome to this great new world, and welcome back to the virtual St. Anselm College. You need to know that we, up on, distracting already, that up at the college, you are certainly in our thoughts and prayers. This is a very difficult time, and it's a time that we just can't say how proud we are of everything you guys are doing. Okay, in so many different ways. I'm going to introduce myself briefly. I'm going to talk in the 2.5 hours that we have going for us. It's 7:03. I'm going to do my best to stay on track. Those of you who've had me in class, it's kind of scary, both because this is new and you're not 18 anymore. I'm talking to folks with PhD, law degree, medical degrees, captains of industry, folks raising kids at home. It's just a broad range. And back when you're 18, you didn't know if what I was saying was crap, but now you're going to know. And hopefully it's not, with any luck, none of it's crap. But in addition to my training in psychology, I came back to New Hampshire running an inpatient chronic pain unit and a rehab unit. I was chief of both hospitals in town, and I had a private practice in psychology. I love psychology, have my license, and consult on occasion. By the way, back up a second. Liz Ossoff is probably on now. I won't know that. Okay, I'm getting a cue that she is on. Loretta Brady may be coming on. When we unmute, you're going to have the opportunity to say hi to her. And we'll have a chance later for a free-for-all where you can talk to each other and send chat messages, and kind of like being at Uppers of sorts on a nice weekend. In addition to what I've been doing in psych, teaching at the college, doing research, sponsoring students, that's fantastic. I've also coached varsity athletes for 15 years. I've coached literally hundreds to their first marathon, and I've done track coaching over the years, and we've had many, many summer camps for kids from junior high and high school. And I've come to appreciate that we totally undervalue coaches, and we totally do not prepare coaches for doing what is probably the most incredibly important thing that we can do, which is entrust them with the development of our young children and young adolescents. And it's incredibly, incredibly important. But I'm going to do a quick test on the share function. I'm going to show you one of the primary reasons why any of you come back to St. Anselm College ever. There are other reasons, but this is it, guys, really. And so far the testing is working. Let's see. There we go. That's it. I like steak and cheese. My wife, Jean, who's doing well now, thank you, is a meatball, calzone person. But I know our Vice President, Jim Flanagan's on, and you come back to the college when we can do it for real, he's going to get us all, he's laughing now, he's going to get us all a calzone. And in turn, you all are going to buy us a glass of wine or a beer. It seems to work out quite well. But we're going to be seeing you back up there, hopefully much sooner than later. Okay, coming back now that I know that it works, and I haven't had dinner yet, and I'm incredibly hungry. I'm going to move into the talk. I'm on sabbatical for a year, so my wife and I, thankfully, doing well, sitting out at the lake, and I've been writing a book on one of my passions, and that is the human dimension of coaching adolescents. I'm very, hey Liz, I'm very, there's a person in the background who's running the show here, and he's kind of bringing folks forward, and I'm still adjusting to this, so I'll manage my distractions better as we go along. what I find in terms of the human dimension of coaching is that we coach an environment where we have winners and losers. Never in my teaching have I ever said to a student, you're a winner and you're a loser. But in coaching, we have that, and people have that sense of humility and victory, and they have to learn also that sense of how do you manage defeat, how do you manage loss, how do you manage loss when you feel you cost your teammates. They're very, very powerful life lessons come out of coaching. You learn emotionally, cognitively, intellectually, relationally. And for me, it's absolutely a fascinating part of life with as many challenges as working in private practice and working with students and doing research. Having the need to sacrifice yourself for a group of people is not typical. May occur in the military, but generally you don't see that, but sports definitely brings it out. And very importantly, you enter a trusting relationship with a coach. That's a very challenging and awesome task to behold. That relationship is something that people carry with them for life. And I recall working with a client who had a lot of trauma at home, and when asking that person where they get their strength, there was a coach. Okay. And that makes a huge difference. Most of our athletes never see a D1 program, and even in D1 programs, there are layers of D1. And even if you get in the top layer of D1, you might be a bench rider. And so we're focusing all our attention on you've got to win the national prize and honor your school. No, what we're doing is developing our young men and women and helping them along the path of becoming fully human adults. Do we want to win the game? Absolutely. We have to define the cost. We have to know what it is. But again, unfortunately, to teach at St. A's, I had to have a PhD, many years of learning, studying. I had to demonstrate I could teach. To be a coach, generally someone says, you want to be a coach? Ah, you're a coach. Worse, hey, you're going to be teaching high school, you're going to teach civics, and you did lacrosse in college, you're going to coach lacrosse. And then you've got to figure it out as it goes. And it's unfortunate because it's a very powerful relationship that you're coming into. Okay, this is where I'm stumbling with, I've got my iPhone connected in. When it says that we have to focus on the person and yes, we want to win, it sounds kind of weak because all coaches are supposed to say, yeah, we're going to win. We're going to get a concussion. I don't care. We're going to go for the win. Now, a number of years, and I'm a level 1, level 2 U.S. track and field coach. And I've been to a number of years going to the national conferences. And my wife and I, at night, we'd always try to sit with a Hall of Fame coach. Men, woman, generally, to be Hall of Fame, you're pretty much retired. And I found some commonalities. This is not a controlled research design, it's simply observation. The commonalities I saw among the Hall of Fame coaches stood out pretty nicely. First of all, they're good listeners. At the conferences, they never got up and say, hey, I'm a winner and this is what I do. They're looking for something new. They're looking for a different angle. They're listening, they're studying, they're evaluating. As a result, they've got pretty good people skills. Second, they love their athletes. And let me reemphasize that. They love their athletes. They may be gruff. They may yell at their athletes, but what you find is they don't yell at the person, they're yelling about the behavior. They don't say, Billy, stop being lazy at the plate. They're saying, Billy, you swung a little bit late on that. Widen your stance a little bit and let's go at it this way. It's about the behavior, not the person, and they get that clear. And you'll see kids, the coach yells at them and you say, what do you think of the coach? And kid says, oh, I really like my coach. Oh, he yells, but that's no big deal. They can see that pretty clearly. Fourth, what I found with these really great coaches is they give the win to the athlete. The coach doesn't win. They set up the strategy, the game, the plan. If everything goes right, the athlete wins the game. The coach can lose the game. If the athlete does everything just right that the coach asks them to do and they lose, that'll bother a good coach more than anything. One last point before I go on is that we were at a dinner meeting one night with an elderly Hall of Fame coach and his wife, and 30-year-old athlete came up and said, "Hey, coach, let's see your ring." This coach had won national D1 title, and he blushed, and he says, "I don't have the ring." His wife said, "I've got it." She had it in her purse. She took the ring out. She handed it to the kid. The kid handed it to me and said, "What do you think of that? My coach is great." And I look at him. He was still blushing. Okay. To me, that's the quality of the coach that you see in the top end winners. And that's what we have to be looking toward in setting our example with working with our children. So I set out to write a book. As I started the book, I've had some really good people help with revision, and after maybe 40 more revisions and 3 more chapters, I'll be done with it. But this isn't about selling a book. It's not on sale. In the 14 chapters, I'm just going to highlight a couple things that are important. One thing that I talk about that's particularly important is the mindfulness set of the athlete. You do not know your athletes if you don't ask them, what do you think and what are you doing? Having them take notes on a piece of paper. You see a kid get up, taking a 2-point foul shot, they throw an air ball, and the coach yells at them, "You're running too tight, sit down." Or they come back and the coach says, "What's going on? Tell me about it." And the kid says, "My dad's never been to a game. My dad's at the game." Very different information. You didn't know what was going on, but because you got into the mindset of the athlete, you understand. 2 types of mindfulness. One is tied in with meditation, the self-awareness that can go along. The other is Langer down in Boston has done a lot of research on this. It's kind of what my grandmother said: be mindful of what you're doing, be aware of who you are, where you are, and what's going on. Example for me being is I'm in my 60s. A lot of people do things for me that say, "Hey, you're old." They let me go to the store an hour earlier than anyone else because I'm old and I could die if I run into the virus. Well, that gives me a message. "Hey, you're old." Someone says, "Hey, let me lift that up for you." It's like, oh, I can lift it, but they're being nice, so I better let them do it. So there's an external push for me to be mindful of who I am. That happens with the athletes too. An athlete comes to college and they're mindful of wanting to be a good teammate and wanting to know their place. And I saw that one year doing hill repeats, a young lady's behind the captain, running up the hill. She's not working that hard. The captain's working hard. I call the captain over and say, "Captain, what would you say if a new athlete were to not pass you, but she could?" And she looked at the athlete and said, "I would tell her that it's not fair to me because that doesn't make me a better athlete." The next hill run, that young lady whooped her. She just blew right by her with the awareness that she has the permission, she has the awareness to be able to do that. Right? I have a whole chapter on the non-rostered team members. These are the team members that don't compete, but they can make or break your season. The parent who makes the cookies and the parent who yells at you. How do you deal with them? Why didn't little Billy play today? The bus driver who's late for the game. The athletic director who has the budget cut and tells you you're not getting what you're getting, but maybe he's a little bit grumpy. And on it goes. And there's a discussion on how best to approach those situations. Another is the adolescent brain. You guys are all St. A's graduate. You get a good understanding that the child brain is very different than the adult brain, but it's not well known how that progresses and how that 13-year-old's frontal lobes aren't connected well to basal limbic structures. And so when they get frustrated, it comes right out. But if you waited 2 minutes, the connection will reoccur and you have a functioning young adult working with you. I don't use words like limbic structures and all because I don't want to lose the reader. When you were in college, you had to do it. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. We'd like to think you all did. But I can lose a reader pretty quickly when it's self-choice. And so try to keep that light and airy. Yes, if you've worked with me, I do have a brief section on brain-derived neurotropic factor. God bless it. I talk about personality in terms of negative behaviors and areas that I'm particularly interested in. I'm just checking my time. We have I've seen the creation, for example, of eating disorders in the sport and how you're working with a person in season, out of season, etc. And it's very easy to do. Blame the person, shame the person, embarrass the person, and you're on your road to having difficulties. And we say eating disorders, generally we think of young women coming in and saying, I'm too fat. They're certainly thinking I'm too fat. But I've seen it a lot with young men where, and I'm not talking about St. Anselm now, but I've seen it with young men where a coach might say, you need to put on 30 pounds or you're not really going to play well. Well, that's a life message that's very damaging and very dangerous. If the person doesn't have the potential to do it in a healthy way, help coach them to a different position. And if you don't have enough to be able to front a line, don't do the sport. Okay, the lives are way too precious for us to be able to do that, and that's particularly concerning for me. The sense that the coach has to have the athlete's view of the world is perhaps one of the most important things. Let's take a look, for example, at gender and culture. That's been changing over the years. When I was a young faculty, I remember one person saying, oh, you can tell when you go to a conference because the woman coaches are all gay. And said it as if gay is bad. Okay, and I'd like to think that that's way behind us. I'd like to think that. But we're still seeing it in different ways. We're seeing it with women coaches who coach. Frankly, my experience is women coach men and women far easier than men coach women. There's a very different psychology there. And I haven't seen a lot of the guys make the adjustment very easily to coaching women. But I know two coaches, one's male, one's female, and they're very equivalent. They're top-level coaches. The male coach is seen as strong, dynamic, smart, and I've heard her referred to as a bitch. But they're both doing the same thing. And so while that attitude still persists on a coaching level, and this is what I've heard at national meetings, when people maybe have had one or two drinks at an open bar. It's kind of the truth tells all place. And to see that that continues to exist is important. In the book, as I talk about gender, what's particularly important for coaches to understand, particularly as people working in the area of LGBTQ, it's best not to get into that, but to value the athlete, to care for the person. especially if you're working in a high school environment, et cetera. Know your resources and get things set up at the start of the season and preseason. This is what we'll do. A coach should never, ever, a male coach should never, female as well, but the greater trauma has occurred when male coaches have asked female athletes for a food diary. What did you eat yesterday and the day before? I've seen real negative consequences. And I've actually seen a nationally known coach recommend that they keep food diaries. And the literature is littered with problems with that area. It's huge. God, I look at the screen and I see people pop up, and it's thoroughly distracting because I want to say hi. I see cricket on the screen. And I can only see like 5 people. Don't wave, I'm talking. God, you used to distract me in school too, cricket. Stop it. But with the LGBTQ, over the years, it's a matter of gentle, guided respect and helping people feel valued as a person, and to say, I don't really understand, but then to be able to respond, provide direction if that's what they're looking for, but don't get into the game. Don't get into the judgment, because it's going to be a problem. I spend a big section talking about out of season and what you do in preseason to direct and structure. One of the things a lot of our developmentally that's important is that they have clear boundaries, so that when you say, if you do this, you're not going to play in a game, then they know that you don't hate them. You don't like that behavior, and as a consequence. The prior director of admissions at St. A's sat down with me for quite some time, and we have a section on going to college, the ins and outs, and some of the tips that they could have. I'm also working now on the section of reflections from old coaches, talking to coaches who've run it through their career, and what are their suggestions. You know, the fascinating thing is, so far, none of the good old coaches are talking about how to get the big win. They're sharing memories of the athletes they cared about. And they're sharing funny anecdotes and stories the same way you guys do when you come back to St. A's. If you've played a sport on campus, you don't sit there saying, hey, do you remember the great play I made? You talk about what you got away with, coach never found out about, or that old faculty, etc. It's relational, and it's very human. Okay. I did a dry run with my brothers and sisters last night to see how it would go. And as family would go, they told me it was absolutely wonderful. I realize I'm running about 5 minutes ahead of myself, which is good to give us time at the end. But I also recognize that family has to say nice things. So we'll see how this all works out. One other area is the area of motivation. And I'm going to switch over to a screen share for a minute. And we'll see how it pops up. Come on. Thank you. This is the classical standard people use when talking about motivating an athlete. There's a person can have either very low physiological arousal. That means as you look at the performance on the left side, they're not going to perform well. They got a cold, they're not feeling well, they're tired, they're sick. Performance is off. You have a level of optimal functioning. And then beyond that, it begins to drop off. You're really hyper, you're jazzed, you're mad. What you want to do in boxing is get someone jazzed, get them mad, get them angry, so that they get hyper aroused, lose control, and you can take them down. And this is the kind of the standard thing we talk about. Today, we're seeing a much better kind of orientation, and it's not a normal inverted U curve. It's kind of tilted off to the side, and that's because we add the secret ingredient called cognitive arousal or anxiety. When you build that in, you get a fascinating and very rapid drop-off in what's occurring in the performance. So here you've got a person who's, we'll go back to the free throw line. They see God, my father came to a game. I haven't seen my father at the game before. Man, they throw an air ball. There's 2 minutes left to go. They go back. The coach says, I see you have trouble in the last 2 minutes of the game. And they go, my father was here and I have trouble in the last 2 minutes. Oh my God. In the next game, in the last couple minutes, they're just throwing air balls. The arousal, the cognitive arousal with the self-talk becomes huge. And if you're not asking them, what are you thinking? At the end of the game, what was going through your head? What was happening with that? You're not going to know what's going on. You're just going to figure this is an athlete that can't play in the last 2 minutes, and you write him off. You bench him in the last 3 minutes. You let her get all the points that you can rouse, but be sure to take them out because that's not their point. And in fact, we've got really good software that says Bob is good from 15 feet out, but at 20 feet, he's a loser, and the coach says, don't take a shot at that point. We never ask them, what's your mindfulness? What does this mean to you, and what's going on with it? Big mistakes. Isn't it interesting that what we're coming down to is fundamentally talk and listen, which is what the Hall of Fame coaches are talking about? I can only see 5 of you, but I will say, Cricket, Liz Ossoff is to your right. You can't see her, but and Liz is smiling, and I bet you still can't call her Liz. Last point is, and I'm going to get out of this area. I was doing neuropsychological testing of concussions before people believed there was such a thing. Now it's really well known that concussions young can affect you pretty terribly when you get older, and a second concussion injury can lead to death. Having said that, there's a gender difference in concussions. And there are things we just don't pay attention to. Little things like if you've had a recent concussion, you shouldn't be reading under fluorescent lights. The 60 cycle oscillation makes your ability to attend and concentrate impaired. So some of those things I talk about. But one thing that I find fascinating is the old notion that women are sugar and spice and everything nice, men are snails and quail and puppy dog tail. And what that means is if a man takes a hit in a football game, he gets a concussion, you got to watch it. Now, again, I'm not talking about St. A's. I love the training room staff there. They're very careful. But I've seen in other areas is when a woman gets a concussion, they put her through the concussion history and fine. As long as she comes back okay, it's good, go play. I knew one guy had 3 concussions. They said, you're out. And the guy wanted to do club because I like competing, but I can't compete in the concussive sport I was playing anymore. And a gal piped up and said, you're kidding, 3? I've had 7 and I'm still playing. That's a problem. And it's a problem we haven't even begun to look at. Concussion injuries in women, and I've got neuropsychologists in the room right now who can really speak clearly about that. You don't walk away from 7 concussions and say, let me go out and get an 8th, please. But we haven't even begun to address that in the sport. All right, it's 7:30. Let me make a change over. What I'm going to be changing now to, I'm so excited about doing this. I totally forgot. By the way, guys, I was supposed to be here doing my talk on athletes. But the stadium is still under construction, as you can see. So maybe when you come back for your next big reunion, you'll see that. But now that I'm going over into the talk on psychology, isolation, and pandemics, trauma and resilience, I think it's more important for me to be prepared for that part. So. Okay, and I need to go to the room I feel like I'm in much of the time now. Thanks for laughing, Liz. This seems to be where we're at today. Okay, we're isolated. The face is covered. I said to a woman in the store today when I was checking out, I said, you know, I'm smiling right now And she said, I can see that in your eyes. And I said, thank you very much. And that was the most intimate human interaction I've had in some time outside the home. And so I want to talk about that. By the way, just talk about resilience and hardiness. Resilience is the ability to bounce back. And some people bounce back better than others. And it's different for everyone. Certainly, if someone's had trauma along the way in their life, this can do one of two things, three things certainly, but it can re-traumatize, certainly, especially if vulnerabilities are running high. Or it can insulate. Hey, I've seen trauma and this ain't it. Or they can get on with getting on. Kayla Simpson just noted Halloween Hannibal Lecter flashback. I still have the pictures, guys. Hardiness is the ability to endure difficult situations. And with hardy at different times, I shouldn't have said that. Now the chat room is beginning to explode. Hey, pay attention to the lecture, Miss Lerner. And trauma is a deeply distressing experience. And that totally understates it. But let me say that a large meta-analysis of the literature takes a look at when you cut your social connections, that has about the same physical consequences as 15 cigarettes a day or misusing alcohol. It's not a neutral thing. Okay, and let's not kid ourselves. Doing what we're doing right now, it's really nice. It's not the same thing. Before I got on tonight, I put on this shirt. Okay. I brushed my teeth, I combed my hair, okay, but how much does that matter? And so people can tend to not be involved with that. There's no end of program chit chat you normally do. I go to a social gathering, maybe I talk with someone afterwards, we take a walk out to the car together. Maybe I talk to a couple folks. Here, it's just gone. It shuts off. And that takes a little bit getting used to. We're telling folks, avoid people by at least 6 feet. And so now when you're walking in the supermarket, someone comes by, they walk away from you. You don't look at a person when you're walking away. You glance to see if they're a safe distance, but you look away and you don't make contact. And so everyone is becoming a little apprehensive of each other. And that's potentially problematic. Okay. Don't touch, don't hug, keep away from people, cover your face. It's all incredibly important, but it's a new adaptation that we need to come to. Isolation can renew a lot of that. Listen very carefully. I hope you don't mind, I'm going to take this off. I haven't had a haircut in 5 weeks. And the Flobies are all sold out if you're old enough to know what that is. Okay, we're 24-hour organisms. If you're not active, and my wife and I do some Tai Chi, we take walks together. I do get some other exercise in. If you're not doing that, it's going to knock off your sleep. If it knocks off your sleep, you're going to be grumpy and moody, more so than just the isolation. So you've got to be able to do that. Otherwise, your ability to bounce back, to be hardy, becomes certainly compromised. And you've got to think of yourself as a 24-hour being. We need to relate in addition to that. And as far as eating goes, I've heard many people say that one thing in isolation is that their clothes seem to be shrinking. Take a deep breath. There'll be time. There'll be time later. Now, one of the other things that's challenging with this is we don't know what the outcome is. I'm in prison here, but I don't know when I get to go free. I got one guy on TV saying by the 1st of May, I might be okay. We're one of those states that are kind of doing okay. I got another guy saying, yeah, watch out. You could die if you do that too soon. And so we are set with an unknown time, which means we don't have control. And one thing certainly in emotional trauma is the lack of the ability to garnish control. And so that control has to be gotten in other ways. And ways of doing that is having short-term and long-term goals. And the short-term goal today, I know is Tuesday because I'm doing this. If I'm not doing anything, one day flows into the other. And my wife and I look at each other and say, is this Saturday? Is it Friday? And that's not a function of age. That's a function of your time clock being disrupted by the lack of activity. Okay, we know that it takes you a matter of minutes if you put a person in an immersion tank and you cut off all senses before they start hallucinating. Lock a person in a dark room for a couple days. Nuts. I'm going to try to share something. Okay.
The long hours without stimulation are creating some very strange experiences.
Oh God, I'm hallucinating now. Tim, I'm hallucinating because I can see a pile of oyster shells, like 5,000 oyster shells in a pond. Oh God, empty shells to represent all the food, nice food I could have eaten while I've been inside it. I'm just going to touch it. It's gone. It's starting to appear now. Come back to me. I hope someone can hear me. I'm hallucinating.
There's a snake there. She's just going along. You just see moving shapes, lights, saw some little tiny cars, zebras. It was quite nice.
That's 2 days in the darkness, and folks are hallucinating. Okay, it doesn't take much, but we're doing it more gradually by the withdrawal, the lack of contact. And Liz can tell you more clearly than I can. The eye gaze, the eye contact. We're changing the rules, but we're still going by old rules. If I look at you and walk away, that can be hurtful. It can be insulting, or it could be an indication that you're very powerful and you threaten me. Now, all of a sudden, we're adapting to things that are very different than what we were doing in the past. And that can be a hard thing to really put your head around and get used to. I'm going to give you some tips that generally you know about. But what I'd like you to do, if you're alone, it's one thing. If there's just two of you with a whole family, your places where you live is like in some ways it's a submarine, and all submarines have decompression chambers. I've actually had this happen with more than one client, where a person comes home from work and the spouse hits him with, "You won't believe," or it's that classic, "You wait till so-and-so gets home, you're going to get it." And then so-and-so gets home and the person says, "Okay, give it to him. You should see what they did today." And the fight occurs. "Can't I get in the house?" "I've been in the house all day. What are you doing?" And so what people do is they cheat on each other. And here's how they do it. They go to the bathroom for 15 minutes, even though they don't have to. Okay. What I do with couples is I tell them, be honest with each other, cover for each other, say, "Mike, I'm going to go hang in the bathroom for 15 minutes. Cover for me, will you?" Or, "Before I make supper in a day, I really want that time out," because many places don't have timeouts. Okay, and you got to have a decompression chamber if there's more than two in the house. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. and certainly problematic. So having some kind of a decompression chamber is huge. Now, this is important to understand that we all want to be loved. We all want to experience joy. But in order to have those feelings, it also comes with sadness, grief, loss, pain, suffering. And this is a hard time. And there are times that I certainly will just feel really grumpy. And I may take a sentence or so before I recognize that I'm being grumpy. Apologize, certainly, but recognize it's a normal part of transition in this new life. If you can only give this up if you want to give up your capacity for joy and love. This is part of the human joy and part of the dilemma of being fully human. So accept that humanity. If you hurt, apologize, but understand it comes in waves. You can be doing really fine, but then get that feeling of, my God, I got to get out of here. This is crazy. Know that it's a wave. And like my grandmother used to say, but they do come in different sizes. You're human, and sometimes it just plain hurts. And it can hurt in very different ways. I was really touched by a picture I got from a former athlete who married a former athlete, and now she's in New York, and she sent me a picture of herself with a mask on, and I started asking folks for pictures and kind of building that up. But there's two types of things going on there. One is the person who walks toward someone suffering with the virus to care for them. That is truly a hero to do that. Or the person who goes out to clean the room and prepping for the new one. Or the person, my God, I was at McDonald's this morning. I love their coffee. And there's the drive-through. And I noticed as the window opened, air was rushing in to that 16-year-old at the window who had no mask, no protection. So some people who don't even know that they're in potential risk. That certainly was unfortunate. But back to the nurse for a minute. It hurt to know that she's putting herself at risk. Okay. Second, her husband is a great guy. He's a sensitive, caring, loving guy. And I am sure that to see his wife leave each day to go into a risk situation is an act of, certainly a powerful act of love that he's not going to share per se. Maybe he does. But to say, honey, each day that you go to work, I'm nervous and anxious, and I'm taking care of the baby, and I'm doing the best. I think it's important, even if you're a couple and you would have date night once a week, to make that effort, to have that time to talk about the joys, the scares, because you're doing that, certainly, a couple, you're doing that together, and that becomes really important to do. Next thing is set boundaries to your day. No one's going to see you, so why bother getting dressed? Do it for you, okay? Set times in the day. They don't have to do a lot, but certain times when you're going to do things. Keep structure and organization in your day, because that's important. I cannot underemphasize the need to be active if you plan on sleeping and having a normal sleep cycle. Okay. And the next thing I want to talk about, I've got two very short videos, is one, we can lose all our freedoms, okay? And we can feel constrained. But within that, there's something that the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who was a POW camp in World War II, was well known for, and this is a very short one, and I hope I capture it properly.
Can be taken from.
It's not going to work the way I wanted it
The
to.
human freedoms.
All right, let me
To
back
choose
it up.
one's attitude in any given set of circumstances.
Screen's not rotating. Let me back it up. We'll try one more time. There we go.
Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. To choose one's own way.
Now, coming from a man who suffered the torment of the POW camps in World War II, and we see this again with Nelson Mandela in his journey in prison, is the last freedom is that attitude that you can take toward what's going on. And that's very powerful. And it's something that has to be done intentionally, to be mindfully engaged in, that this is what I will to do. This is what I choose to do. And with that, I'm going to bring up the the last share on this.
Present an
There you go.
Max Home Entertainment is proud to present an extraordinary new movie. Nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Director, Best Actor, Best Screenplay, and only the second film ever nominated for both Best Picture and Best Foreign Film. Meet a real-life Prince Charming. He has met the woman of his dreams, and he'll do everything in his power to sweep her off her feet and carry her away. Now, his fairy tale life takes a serious turn. To protect his family, this loving father has to turn the hard truth into a simple game. Wonderful. 2 thumbs up, says Siskel and Ebert. A modern comic masterpiece, raved the Chicago Tribune. Written, directed by, and starring Italy's national treasure, Roberto Benigni. In the story that proves love, family, and imagination conquer all.
That movie certainly is available online. It's a little bit older now, but of a man with his son in World War II changing the encampment to a game of points that you can get, and in the end you can win a tank if you're good enough. Very powerful. How we structure our meaning and the attitude we take toward what's happening is huge. I challenge you, when you're out there, take that extra effort to say, hey, hope you're having a good day. How you doing? When it's comfortable and when it's safe. People need that more than ever. We certainly need that. And it helps ourselves, it helps us personally as much as it helps anyone else. Now, my colleague, Loretta Brady, I've worked with trauma, okay? She is more expert in trauma and has developed Requity Labs and has started a frontline resilience peer support group that she's doing. And I'm stumbling because I'm playing with this thing again. I want to show it to you. There we go. Best fumble of the evening. Yeah, if I put it sideways, it won't come out so well. You can probably do, if you know how to do it, a screen capture on your machine, or take a picture of the screen if you want to. But she's offering for alumni, healthcare professionals, first responders, an opportunity to do a peer group that she will be there working with. I think that's an absolutely wonderful thing that she'll be moderating. And it's Recordy Labs at anselm.edu. She's a graduate of St. A's, and we're very, very lucky to get her back to the college, as we've been lucky so many times with the good people that we have. And I really have a lot of positive things to say about her. All right, I'm going to stop with this, and it's 7:52 now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over a little bit. Those of you who've been out to the lake, if you haven't, why haven't you? I'm going to shift now. I'm at the fire pit. Can relax a little bit. You've never seen me do this in a class before, but it's time. Toast all of you. And I think at this point, if we're recording, we might be able to stop that. And what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to give folks an opportunity to open chat. But first, I don't know if Loretta's there, but if we can unmute her and Liz Ossoff so they can say hi to you guys, because look, you guys wanted to come to the college. We weren't able to pull it off. But my God, we do miss you and welcome you back.